What if they missed the boat entirely? Now, I know that's preposterous. I'm just one lame guy in Western Michigan, and there are billions of Christians and structures and creeds and synods and bishops and libraries. I can't possibly be right. But you're here and you're listening. Let's give it a go. Of course, when you think about it, nothing outrages Jesus Incorporated more than the idea that the product they want to sell is actually free. A fellow named Carlton Pearson, you may have heard of him, but you have in fact heard of Rob Bell, have gotten famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, for suggesting that maybe God is not busy making up lists and checking them twice. Pearson notably has suggested that the gospel is one of inclusion, that everyone is bound for heaven, whether they're Christians or not. And if you thought there were heresies before, this one is the granddaddy, grandmommy, it's the whole shooting match. Because as I said, if you work for Jesus Incorporated and someone comes along and starts giving away what you're selling, it ruins your business plan. I'm being flippant, I understand that, but I'm trying to make a point about the assumption that one is Christian in order to get into heaven, which I don't think is accurate. Those of you who grew up in the Reformed tradition here in West Michigan may remember the tulip configuration, TULIP. Well, what Rob Bell poked at and what Carlton Pearson essentially removed and what my Universalist tradition declared is there is unlimited atonement. You don't have to pay. It's free. Now, we might talk about whether there's anything or what. The whole point is we're all in it together forever. And that's where I want to go. At the end of the day, the longer I look at this, I realize that everything is alive forever. That there really isn't death in the biggest sense of the term. And I do mean people, and I do mean animals and plants and other things and microbes, but as I pondered this, I realized there's no boundary between me and anything in the universe. There's nothing that makes me essentially different. You know, in some ways you could say human beings are nothing but chemistry with attitude. The stuff inside you was created in the depths of a star that died billions of years ago. I have to say that, Senator Santorum, convict me if you wish. Billions of years ago. So you're just made of everything that everything else is made of. Say, well, I'm alive and it's dead. How do you know? You know, there was a time when human beings thought other human beings that didn't look like them were not even human. They had that debate about whether or not to convert the Indians when they moved here. One of the arguments against converting them was, well, they're not people, so they don't have souls. Weird reasoning, but we discovered they were people. Isn't that interesting? We made the same kind of excuse about enslaving Africans. But for a long time in medieval Europe, people honestly believed that animals did not have physical sensations. So cruelty to them was immaterial. They didn't feel pain, and anyone who owns a cat knows that that's a lie. And anyone who owns a dog knows that dogs also know fear and anger. So we've discovered that animals have emotions. We've discovered, among other things, that some animals have families and societies, and that some animals actually communicate with each other like dolphins or whales, and some of them, birds, use tools. Remember the term bird brain? These are not very bright creatures, and yet so the gap between us and other animals is just evaporating. Well, why stop at animals? Why is it that anything living is different? We all have DNA in us. We all have the same chemicals in us. Push as hard as you can, and everything is connected. There's nothing that isn't connected to us and we to them. And where do we come off thinking we're alive and something else is not? No, it's all alive, every blessed bit of it. What we mean when we talk about eternal life is, I get to be me forever. That's the part we can't make happen. So you have a choice. You can believe in eternal life, which is a fact, or you can believe in eternal personality, which is a dream. I prefer to go with the facts. The truth is, everything is alive. It really is alive, and the fact that we don't sense it is not because it's not alive, it's because we're not paying attention. Albert Schweitzer, whom we revere every year at Reverence for Life Sunday, coined that term as he was going down an African river and realized that the life around him permeated the universe, that he was in it, that the animals were there, and the crocodiles and the water and the fish. And he coined that term, reverence for life, that that's the thing we all bring with us when we go into whatever house of worship we call, that it is this longing of life for itself, this revering of life itself and all of its expansiveness that propels us. And this is a man who gave up a career in theology because he realized it was a dead end and became a doctor in Africa. He gave up the church, Jesus Incorporated, so that he could take part in eternal life. Now, if everything is alive, that means there really is no death. This sounds naive, I know, but hear me out. This warm weather we're enjoying, it's wonderful warm weather, and the daffodils came out today. Where were they in the winter? Likewise, the bugs are now crawling up all over the place. I ran into 2 clouds of gnats on the way to church. They weren't there last week. Where did they come from? To our senses, the world seems almost dead in winter, and yet the reality is it's still alive. My point here is that even when we can't see the things that are alive, they are there, and the things we think are dead are only dead to us. It is something we have assigned. Death is something that happens as part of life. It is not separate from it. Like I said, the thing that's most naive is not believing in eternal life, it's believing in eternal individuality. My grass will be needing mowing every week from here until Columbus Day, but I kill blades every week along the way. Time is infinite, it has no limit, and yet this hour is already coming to a close, and I'm trying to find a way to shorten this sermon without shortening my point. The particular and the universal are always captured in one thing. And the best analogy I have for understanding the particularity of my life inside the immensity of life itself, and therefore yours, is musical. That song had a lot of notes in it. But if you don't go from one note to another, it's not a song, right? You got to go from one note to the next note to the next note. The note can only last so long before it ceases to be a note and becomes annoying. Our individual lives are notes in a song. Our individual lives plug into the larger life the way a note plugs into a song or a word into a poem. And when we remember a song, do you remember just the notes you like? Of course not. You remember the whole song. You're sitting there or standing there in the shower, and not only are you singing, you're hearing all the background music, aren't you? You hear all the notes. Long ago, when I was in Vienna for the first time, I'm a failed musician, you should know that. Great lover of classical music. So I went to visit Mozart's house. The only one left that we know exists. It's on the 2nd floor. It's very austere because they don't want to fill it up with phony furniture. So what they have are pictures and labels and displays and places where you can listen to his music. Now, if you know me, you know I'm a great lover of his opera, The Marriage of Figaro, especially the very last scene when the Count realizes he's been a fool and begs for forgiveness from his wronged wife. And that's what I chose to listen to. And as I'm listening to it, I'm reading a little bit at the same time and realize he lived in that apartment when he wrote that piece of music. In other words, I was looking at the walls that contained him when he wrote this piece of music. I was hearing in my ears at that moment, and I just fell apart and wept. This sense of belonging to the music and the music to me, and the boundaries between him and me and then and now and music, it just all fell apart. It was a religious experience.